650,000 people in the U.S. are experiencing sheltered or unsheltered homelessness, according to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development's 2023 Homeless Assessment Report, with those who identify as BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, people of color, experience homelessness at a higher rate.
Agenda item number 2, which is our proclamation for this month, and we have a proclamation on World Homeless Day. Do board members have it ready to go? Ray, would you be willing to start us off?
Sure. World Homeless Day, whereas October 10th, 2024 is World Homeless Day, which was established to raise awareness of the needs of the people experiencing homelessness and promote work in the local communities to alleviate the suffering of those experiencing it. And
whereas over 650,000 people in the U.S. are experiencing sheltered or unsheltered homelessness, according to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development's 2023 Homeless Assessment Report, with those who identify as BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, people of color, experience homelessness at a higher rate. And
whereas in the 2024 Washington State point-in-time count, an estimated 31,040 people were experiencing either sheltered or unsheltered homelessness, reflecting a 26% rise in homelessness since 2022. The Thurston County point-in-time report identified 864 individuals in January 2024, marking a 14% increase compared to 2023. And
whereas changing circumstances can disrupt family dynamics in individuals' lives, leading to financial hardships that often result in homelessness, many low-income individuals and families face significant difficulties finding affordable and adequate housing. Job loss, unemployment, high healthcare costs, and other challenges such as domestic violence, addiction, or disability can further strain their ability to secure necessities and can make it difficult to escape the cycle of homelessness. And
whereas everyone has a role to play in supporting unhoused individuals and families, including neighborhood associations, faith-based groups, community partners, businesses, nonprofits, policymakers, and concerned citizens, it is essential that we collectively engage in efforts to combat poverty and support those in need.
Now, therefore, be it resolved, the Board of Health hereby proclaims October 10th as World Homeless Day in Thurston County and encourages all residents to demonstrate their commitment to advocating for human rights by spreading awareness to increase efforts dedicated to ensuring adequate housing, healthcare, and access to meaningful work. Adopted this 8th day of October 2024, Board of Health.
thank you. I think we have a guest speaker coming to talk to us today. Welcome.
Great, thank you. I'm Tom Webster. I'm the Senior Program Manager for Thurston County's Office of Housing and Homeless Prevention. So on behalf of Thurston County's Office of Housing and Homeless Prevention and all the local service providers who work tirelessly to support those experiencing homelessness in our community, I'd like to thank the Board of Health for its proclamation regarding World Homeless Day. I wanted to share a few highlights of the work our community is doing to address homelessness. In Thurston County, initiatives like Anchor Community Initiative and Built for Zero play a significant role in addressing homelessness by providing dedicated workspace and capacity for educational support and community integration opportunities. These initiatives drive our mission to reduce chronic and veteran homelessness to functional zero and to end youth homelessness in Thurston County. Through the creation of a countywide quality by name list supported by timely input of service provisions and housing inflow and outflow data, Thurston County has shown its dedication to housing first principles and the belief that by working together as a community, we can make homelessness rare, brief, and non-recurring. These initiatives have also increased collaboration between service providers, which includes coordinated outreach to encampments across service organizations and jurisdictions, case conferencing between service providers for personalized and effective case management, and countywide data collection and analysis to better inform homeless response programs and activities. Due largely to funding received under the state's rights of way or encampment resolution program since 2023, our community has created an additional 168 enhanced shelter units and 89 new permanent supportive housing units, with another 64 permanent supportive housing units opening at Lotus Court this week. Thurston County is also intentional about centering the voices of people with lived experience. The Lived Experience Housing Steering Committee is comprised of individuals who have lived experience of homelessness, in addition to racial and ethnic identities that are overrepresented among those accessing the homeless crisis response system. This committee gives voice to those underrepresented where decisions about housing are made. And finally, we just encourage all residents of Thurston County to support and acknowledge the expertise of our homeless service providers and just show compassion towards all persons experiencing homelessness. Thank you.
Questions from the board?
I did have a question. I thank you so much for your work and thank you for being here. I am curious about your relationship with law enforcement in relationship to homelessness, and are you working with them in any capacity, and how that affects your work?
Yeah, so our office directly does not have a formal relationship with law enforcement. I would say we occasionally have kind of interaction. Our service providers do more regularly interact, especially when there's concerns around an encampment. There's usually good coordination and communication with law enforcement prior to whether there needs to be a closure of an encampment or if there's concerns. So our service providers do work pretty closely with law enforcement. And each jurisdiction, especially Lacey and Olympia, have mobile outreach teams. There are more formal communications between outreach providers and law enforcement.
Thank you. Would you say that if I were to be looking for like a framework of best practices and how to, as a law enforcement person or a law enforcement adjacent person, how to engage encampments and homeless people, unhoused folks, would I directly contact a service provider, or would you guys have access to something like that?
I would recommend reaching out to us. We, there's lots of resources from the United States Interagency Council on Homelessness, and there's other resources. Department of Commerce has also some best practice resources out there. Service providers also likely have some of that information as well. So I'm happy to work with you to identify whatever resources may be appropriate.
Thank you.
See Commissioner Menser and then Commissioner Mejia and then Dr. Harvey.
I know there was concern in the community when the Supreme Court did its ruling and on the Grants Pass case, and I see the encampment resolution program with weekly meetings. Who attends those meetings, and would that be something that would those types of issues be discussed in that forum?
Yeah, so that is under the state's, what used to be known as the Rights of Way program, and they've changed names to it's now known as the Encampment Resolution Program. So those meetings are really between our state partners and local partners around the funding that comes from the state under that encampment resolution program. So it is not addressing those larger policy issues such as Grants Pass. So I attend, people from our staff attend those meetings, and then our contracted Interfaith Works, Olympia Mutual Aid Partners, City of Lacey, City of Olympia, and then our state partners, as well as several other local providers.
If there were to be a discussion about a procedure or process for a camp closure or something of that nature, would that probably go to the Regional Housing Council first?
Yeah, probably. At that point, there have not been specific conversations from a regional point on how to address Grants Pass. There's been some, I would say, preliminary kind of discussions. Is this something for the Regional Housing Council to address? How would they do so? But it's been at a very, I would say, preliminary level and not something that's reached the full our Regional Housing Council yet for discussion.
I'm going to skip the queue for just a brief question, follow-up. Is there funding accessible or distributable through the Encampment Resolution Program, which used to be called the Right-of-Way Initiative? Because I know that the City of Lacey received a substantial amount of funding through the Right-of-Way Initiative, and that resulted in Maple Court, our ability to open up Maple Court as a shelter. So is there still state funding attached to the encampment resolution program?
Yes, so currently we have state funding that goes through June 30th of 2025. We are anticipating in the upcoming state legislative session that there'll be additional funding for that to continue the operations. I think there's a question at what level of funding that will be provided and whether it will be sufficient to continue operations of all the kind of programs, both shelters and permanent supportive housing that have been created under the Rights of Way program. But there is anticipated to be additional funding, yes.
And if I may, that one of the shared legislative priorities that is coordinated by the chamber and includes all the jurisdictions is actually some funding to be able to support Lehigh in the conversion of Maple Court to permanent supportive housing.
That's great. Sounds like a lot of us are on the same page. We need that. Commissioner Mejia, then Dr. Harvey, and Commissioner Fournier, I see your hand as well.
I just wanted to add that our team here in Thurston County also works very closely with our Behavioral Health Association. And so they are, there's a lot of coordination that happens there quite a bit, especially when it comes to the law enforcement piece. You know, we have different, you know, we have our lead team and then that also coordinates with all of you, especially when it comes to tapping into those resources that are so needed.
Yeah, thank you.
Then my question was, do we have any data on the current state of like students enrolled in schools who are experiencing homelessness or families with children?
Yeah, as part of our point in time count, we do work with kind of local school districts to collect that information. I don't have that in front of me, so I can get that for you. But we do have information. It's collected a little bit differently for students. The definition of homelessness is different for students under McKinney-Vento than it is kind of within the point in time. So we do collect that information. I don't have that data right with me, but happy to provide that.
Thank you.
Commissioner Fournier?
Yeah, I think everybody was kind of already hitting at it, but you know, I have a lot of concern or worry that with the changing legal landscape and you know requirements no longer being in place that were in place, the funding is going to quickly dry up for all these programs that we've created. And like, who is tracking that? Is that like Tom? Are you like tracking that acutely? Like there seems to be like a cliff, you know, potentially a cliff that we're headed to.
Yeah, so we are in regular contact with, especially through that weekly ERP meeting. We're talking to our state partners about what they're looking to do. And so during the legislative session, we work with the Washington State Association of Counties and their lobbyists to be informed about what's going on. So we do try to keep track of funding levels. Yes.
I think it's not.
Is there?
Oh, go ahead.
Is there any kind of greater assessment that we could like get? You know, kind of like a look. You know, maybe the RHC is talking about it, already has it, but like some holistic look at like what all we've done, what all our obligations are, and what the time frame is with those.
Yeah, that's a good question. We do, the Regional Housing Council put together a kind of a 1-page or 2-page flyer of the things that have done. We do have a good handle on the budget, but we could do some work to kind of pull that together as part of, as Rob stated, you know, as part of the legislative agenda for the RHC, we could put that together so it's as robust as possible for that ask.
Okay, and I'd love to be briefed on that, or maybe the whole commission.
Yeah, I think that would be great if you could send that out to the board. Commissioner Mejia?
I just wanted to add that it is something that the Regional Housing Council has discussed multiple times. That's why it's one of our top legislative priorities. Of the state gave us this funding to address the present needs, but not the ongoing funding that is required. And so the discussion is now to keep this new places in place, right? We're going to have to take away from other places that, you know, we were supporting. And it's been an ongoing request from the legislator that, you know, they have to really keep funding these homes, because if not, we're going to end up where we were. And one of the statistics that I was very impressed with as we were going through the whole right-of-way cleanup was that the jungle grew twice its size than what it was originally, just through these right-of-way cleanups. And now we're having to deal with the impacts of that as well. So there's been a lot of discussion on those funding necessities. Yes, it is a cliff, I agree, but I think everyone's very aware of it. And so that's why we keep requesting those needs to the governor and to the legislator.
And I think that it helps that the jurisdictions, the different boards and organizations that are focused on reducing homelessness in Thurston County, we're all kind of pointed in the same direction on this, right? Like the Regional Housing Council, the Encampment Resolution Program, the City of Lacey, the county, the City of Olympia, we all agree we need sustained supportive funding for this, because just in Lacey, we built, you know, we established Maple Court. The plan was that would be 120 units of long-term supportive housing. That is not what it is today. It is a shelter, because we didn't get the other half of the funding to convert the units so that it can really be long-term supportive housing. And we need additional support and funding to be able to do that. So we have, you know, people are concerned that we have a failed model, I think. I've heard that from folks saying, it didn't work. You built Maple Court, it didn't work. We're not finished yet. We're only halfway there. So we need to be able to finish to do what we committed to do with the community and provide that kind of support.
But what if that funding isn't coming?
Well, that's a kind of a scary question, I think, a good question, and we need to be asking our legislators how they can help us follow through on the commitment, because I think not just in Lacey, but across the county, we made a series of commitments in good faith because the state said we need to all work together to address this issue. And so we invested, we committed to things like Maple Court and other housing programs, but we really need the state to come through for us.
So Robin, what is the legislative funding timeline? Do they have a plan, or did they just give a chunk of money?
The Right-of-Way Initiative allocated money to address some of the encampments that were in the right-of-ways. And for instance, Lacey, again, took some of that funding to be able to convert a hotel into, right now, shelter, about 120 units of shelter. But we don't know yet. We have funding through June of 25, and we've got a legislative session coming up where I'm guessing this is going to be a hot topic. But we won't know for sure that we have funding past June of 25 until April 25 at the end of the legislative session when we get the final budget.
So back to Wayne's initial question, I believe, is do we know what that figure is to get us through the next 3 years, next 2 years? And who is leading that?
That's a great question. I don't have the figure off the top of my head. But...
Yeah, I don't have that figure off the top of my head, but we have that information. We can look at our current contracts. And I'll say we actually met with Low Income Housing Institute today to talk about their plan for conversion of Maple Court from enhanced shelter to permanent supportive housing. It was originally designed as a 2 to 4 year time frame. We knew it was going to be an enhanced shelter to start with the plan to convert that. The Regional Housing Council has awarded a little over $1 million to support that conversion. Lehigh has indicated that they intend to submit an application next year to the Housing Trust Fund for the additional funding to support that conversion.
And that's through the Department of Commerce,
That's
right?
through the Department of Commerce. They also relayed that they've had conversations with the state. They're also concerned about that ongoing operations funding. The state has some money for the right-of-way kind of going forward. I don't want to say the exact number because I don't remember it exactly, but the state is requesting full funding for the right-of-way. So there will be partial funding to continue right-of-way initiative funding. And so what the request of the legislature from Department of Commerce is for full funding so they can fully fund all the operations of the existing projects across the state.
Thank you. I saw County Manager Hernandez and then Commissioner Fournier, and then we should probably move on from this topic, even though we could probably all continue talking about it because it is a very interesting public health topic.
I think Tom summed it up. Getting an inventory of ongoing costs, because the program's only as good as the ability to support it ongoingly. And, one could argue you make an initial investment, but you don't have the funds to do the ongoing support. It creates a bit of unmet expectation that then becomes problematic. So glad to hear that that's something that's being considered.
No bridges to nowhere. Commissioner Fournier?
Yeah, I want to echo that. I have great concern that that funding is not coming since the legal landscape has changed, the motivations have changed, and there's no shortage of needs out there, whether it be the schools or public defense standards. I mean, everybody's going to be asking, and there's no longer the legal motivation, and the right of way stuff has almost made it out of sight, out of mind now. So like this is a looming issue that I don't want us to not be in front of and be realistic about.
Yes.
This could be potentially something that our policy subcommittee could consider, because as the concerns have been brought up, who knows what's going to happen after June 2025.
Yeah, it's like the same story again and again, where there's money to fund capital things, and then there's no money for ongoing expenses, and whether it be whatever little pocket of things we're working on, it's the same story every time, and I'm scared on this one.
Thank you. And thank you for the suggestion that the policy committee take this out.
This video was intended to inform and educate the public.